The sun was slowly dipping behind the distant hills, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. On the edge of a quiet countryside, far from the nearest town, lived a young cowgirl named Clara. She had inherited a small ranch from her parents, who had passed away years ago, leaving her alone with the land, the animals, and the endless rhythm of rural life. Her days were filled with work, and though they were long and sometimes lonely, Clara had grown used to the solitude. She liked the quiet and the freedom that came with living on her own. There was no one to answer to, no one to rely on but herself, and in a strange way, that made her feel strong. Every morning, she rose before the sun, stepping into the cool, crisp air of the early day. She would tend to the horses first, brushing their coats until they shone and filling their troughs with fresh water. She had always felt a special bond with the animals. They didn't judge. They didn't talk too much. And they always responded to kindness, with trust. Her small herd of horses was like her family, and she took pride in caring for them. After the horses, she would feed the chickens, check on the small vegetable garden she kept, and make sure the fences were strong and secure. The ranch required constant attention, and there were no days off. But Clara never minded. She liked the rhythm of it, the way each task connected her to the land and to a life she had chosen for herself. Still, despite the work and the animals, Clara often felt the weight of loneliness. Evenings were the hardest. After the chores were done and the sun sank behind the hills, the quiet would settle in. She would sit on the porch, sipping a cup of tea, listening to the wind rustle through the trees and the distant calls of birds settling in for the night. The silence was comforting, but sometimes it felt heavy. She missed conversation, laughter, and the simple warmth of another person's presence. Her neighbors were miles away, and visits were rare. Yet, she had learned to find peace in her own company, finding solace in the beauty of the land she loved and the animals she cared for. One evening, as the sky turned a deep purple and the first stars began to appear, Clara decided to take one last ride around the property before nightfall. She saddled her horse, a sturdy brown mare named Daisy, and rode toward the far edge of her land. The fields stretched wide, dotted with wildflowers, and tall grasses swaying gently in the breeze. It was the kind of evening that made her feel alive, the kind that reminded her why she had chosen this life, even if it meant being alone. As she rode along the narrow trail near the creek, she noticed something unusual. A figure lay sprawled on the ground, half hidden by the tall grass. At first, she thought it might be an animal, perhaps a fallen deer or a stray dog, but as she drew closer, her heart skipped a beat. It was a man, and he looked badly hurt. Blood stained his shirt, and his breathing was uneven. Panic rose in Clara's chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She dismounted and approached carefully, keeping her horse close. "Hey," she called softly, not wanting to startle him. "Can you hear me?" The man groaned and shifted slightly, opening one eye to glance at her. His face was pale and strained, and his eyes were filled with pain. Clara could see that he had been hurt badly, but she could also see something else, an instinct to survive, a strength beneath the weakness. She didn't hesitate. Carefully, she helped him sit up, supporting his weight as best she could. It was difficult. He was heavy, and the ground was uneven, but she managed to get him to the horse, where she wrapped a blanket around his shoulders and gave him water from a canteen she always carried. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice weak. I don't know how I got here." Clara didn't ask questions yet. Right now, the important thing was to get him to her cabin, a small wooden structure not far from the creek. She tied Daisy nearby, gently lifted him as much as she could, and guided him along the path. It took longer than she expected. Every step was a struggle, and he winced with pain, but the thought of leaving him there alone was unbearable. She couldn't just ride away and pretend she hadn't seen him. By the time they reached the cabin, darkness had settled completely. Clara lit the lanterns, creating a warm, golden glow in the small space. She helped him onto the bed, careful not to jostle his injuries. She examined his wounds as best she could, cleaning and bandaging them with supplies she had kept for emergencies. He had a deep cut on his leg and bruises across his chest, likely from a fall or an accident while riding. Clara worked silently, her hands steady despite the adrenaline running through her veins. "You're lucky I found you when I did," she said softly. "You need to rest now." The man nodded, too exhausted to speak more. Clara placed a glass of water beside him and pulled a blanket over his shoulders. She moved around the cabin, checking the animals and securing the doors and windows. Her mind still alert, despite the late hour. She felt a mix of fear and concern. This was a stranger, and she had no idea who he was or why he had ended up here. But she also felt a deep sense of responsibility. In that quiet cabin, far from the nearest neighbor or town, she knew she had to act with courage and kindness. Hours passed slowly. Clara sat by the window, watching the stars wheel across the sky, listening to the soft breathing of the injured man and the occasional creak of the wooden cabin. She thought about her life, about the solitude she had chosen, and about how unexpectedly it had been interrupted. Helping someone in need, especially someone she didn't know, was both frightening and fulfilling. She realized that sometimes life placed unexpected challenges in front of her, and she had to rise to meet them, no matter how difficult or scary. As midnight came and the world outside grew stiller, she checked on him again. He was sleeping. Though his face was pale and drawn, she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that she had made it through the first part of the night. Her mind wandered, thinking of the stories she had heard as a child. Tales of cowboys, of families, and of the dangers of life in the wild countryside. And now, she was part of her own story. One she hadn't anticipated. One that demanded bravery, compassion, and patience. By the early hours of the morning, Clara had kept watch over the man, ensuring he was safe and comfortable. She had fed the animals, tended to the fire, and kept herself alert despite exhaustion. The first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, casting a soft glow over the cabin. She felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. Whatever challenges the day would bring, she had faced the night with courage. She had saved a life, and in doing so, she had proven to herself that her strength and compassion could extend beyond the walls of her ranch. For Clara, that night marked the beginning of something unexpected. The quiet life she had known, filled with work and solitude, had been interrupted in the most surprising way. But she had faced it with courage, and she knew that whatever came next, she would be ready. The sunrise promised hope, new challenges, and perhaps the arrival of a new chapter in her life, one that would connect her to others in ways she had never imagined. And as she stepped outside to check on Daisy and the other horses, she felt a sense of peace. She had faced the unknown with bravery. And though the night had been long and exhausting, she had proven to herself that kindness, courage, and determination could shine even in the darkest hours. The land, the animals, and now this wounded stranger had all become part of her life in ways she hadn't expected. And Clara knew that her story was only beginning. The morning sunlight streamed gently through the cabin windows, casting warm patterns across the wooden floor. Clara stirred awake, her eyes first settling on the quiet horses outside before turning to the man who had spent the night under her care. He was still lying on the bed, pale but breathing steadily, a testament to her efforts during the long hours of the night. She quietly moved around the cabin, careful not to wake him too abruptly. Her hands were steady as she adjusted the blanket and refilled the water glass she had set beside the bed. Though she had faced loneliness for years, she realized that the responsibility of caring for another human being added a new depth to her life. It was both challenging and strangely comforting. When he finally opened his eyes, the man blinked against the morning light. There was a faint smile on his lips, weak but genuine. "Good morning," he said softly. His voice carried a rasp, showing that his body was still tender from the injuries. Clara smiled back, her heart warming at the sight of him alert and speaking. "Morning," she replied. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thanks to you," he said. "I don't even know your name." "I'm Clara," she said simply. "You're safe here. That's what matters right now." The man nodded, his gaze wandering around the cabin. I think I've been lucky, he admitted. Lucky to find you. Clara felt a small wave of humility. She had acted without thinking of reward, simply because it was the right thing to do, yet hearing his words reminded her that even small acts of kindness could have profound meaning. She helped him sit up slowly, supporting his weight as he gingerly swung his legs off the bed. He winced at the movement, but he managed a grateful nod. Clara handed him the glass of water, and he drank it carefully, savoring each sip. I don't know how I ended up here, he confessed, his voice quiet. I was riding back from the north pasture, and then everything went wrong. My horse stumbled. I fell, and then I don't remember much after that. Clara listened intently. She had always been patient, and now that patience was tested in a way she hadn't anticipated, she realized that his story was incomplete. That his wounds were not just physical but also carried the weight of uncertainty and fear. You're safe now, she reassured him. You'll get stronger, and then we can figure out what to do next. The man's eyes softened, and he allowed himself to lean back against the pillows. He seemed to relax in her presence, comforted by her calm demeanor. I don't even know if anyone is looking for me, he said quietly. I was alone when it happened. Clara shook her head. People will notice when someone doesn't return home. Families always look for their own. You'll be found. For the next hour, Clara worked to make him comfortable, checking his bandages and cleaning minor scrapes she hadn't noticed the night before. She moved with care, mindful of his injuries, and spoke in a soothing tone, keeping the conversation light but reassuring. The man gradually opened up, telling fragments of his life. He spoke of the ranch he shared with his brothers, of the hard work and long days that were part of a cowboy's life, and of his love for the land. Clara listened, fascinated by his dedication and resilience, which mirrored her own in many ways. Despite the calm of the morning, Clara remained vigilant. She knew that even small injuries could become serious if left untreated. She applied ointments she kept for emergencies and adjusted the blankets to ensure he stayed warm. Her experience with animals had taught her patience and careful observation, skills she now applied to caring for him. She noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand trembled slightly, and the occasional wince when he shifted position. These small details mattered, and Clara attended to them without hesitation. As the morning progressed, the man grew stronger. He attempted to sit up fully, testing his balance. Clara remained close, ready to assist. Slowly, she advised. Don't push yourself too hard. I will, he promised, his voice firmer now. I can't thank you enough. You don't have to thank me, Clara said with a gentle smile. I did what anyone would do. You needed help, and I gave it. He studied her for a moment, a mixture of gratitude and admiration in his eyes. Most people wouldn't, he said quietly. Most people would have ridden away, afraid or unwilling to help. But you saved me. Clara felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Praise was rare in her life of solitude, and while she didn't perform acts of kindness for recognition, it was comforting to know her efforts had made a difference. The man's words lingered, not as flattery, but as a genuine acknowledgement of her courage and compassion. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Clara prepared a simple breakfast of bread and eggs, carefully helping him eat without straining his injuries. The cabin filled with the quiet sounds of morning, the clinking of dishes, the soft creak of the wooden floor, and the distant calls of birds. There was a sense of normalcy returning, even amidst the extraordinary circumstances. As they ate, the man began to speak of his brothers. I have 2 older brothers, he said. They manage the ranch together, and we look out for one another. I can't imagine what they'd think if they knew I'd gone missing. Clara nodded. Family is important. They'll come looking for you. He smiled faintly, the first real smile since he had arrived. I hope so, he said. I'd hate to worry them. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: horses, the land, and the daily routines of ranch life. Clara shared stories of her own experiences, the challenges and joys of living alone, and the small triumphs that came with hard work. They laughed together over minor mishaps with animals, and for the first time since his injury, the man seemed at ease. By midday, he was able to sit in a chair, his leg carefully supported. Clara admired his determination. Despite the pain, he refused to give in to weakness, demonstrating the same resilience she had cultivated in her own life. She helped him move to the porch, where he could enjoy the warm sunlight and the gentle breeze. The view was breathtaking: rolling hills, grazing horses, and endless fields stretching into the distance. He breathed deeply, savoring the fresh air and the feeling of safety. Clara observed him quietly, noting the changes in his demeanor. The fear and pain of the previous night had begun to fade, replaced by gratitude and trust. She felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that her care had made a tangible difference. Yet, she also sensed that his story was far from over. There were questions about his journey, his brothers, and how they would react when they discovered he had been missing. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cabin yard, the man finally revealed more of his story. "We were moving cattle across the northern fields," he said. "It's dangerous work, and sometimes accidents happen. I got separated while trying to help a young calf that had fallen. I didn't expect to end up hurt and alone." Clara listened, her hands resting on the railing of the porch. She admired his honesty and humility. He wasn't exaggerating or seeking sympathy. He was simply recounting the events that had led him to her doorstep. It reminded her of the unpredictability of life, how quickly circumstances could change, and how crucial it was to act with courage and kindness when needed. The hours passed, and by late afternoon, the man was able to move more comfortably. Though he remained careful with every step, Clara continued to care for him, preparing food, tending to minor injuries, and sharing stories to pass the time. The bond between them grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. For Clara, this connection was new and unexpected. For the man, it was a lifeline, a reminder that, even in moments of danger and uncertainty, there were people willing to help. As evening approached, the sky once again turned shades of pink and orange. Clara felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had faced the challenges of the day with patience and skill, providing care and comfort to someone in need. She realized that her life of solitude had prepared her in ways she hadn't fully appreciated. The long hours of tending animals, fixing fences, and managing the ranch had taught her resilience, problem-solving, and compassion, the very qualities that now made a difference in another person's life. The man watched her work, a mixture of admiration and gratitude in his eyes. "You've done more for me than you know," he said quietly. "I can't imagine what would have happened if you hadn't been here." Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You're stronger than you realize," she replied. "You'll recover. And soon, you'll be back on your feet. And when your family finds you, they'll see that too." As night fell, they sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. The quiet of the countryside wrapped around them like a gentle blanket. Clara felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had made a difference. She also sensed that this night, and the day that had followed, marked the beginning of something significant, not just for the man she had helped, but for herself as well. For the first time in a long while, she felt connected to someone beyond the walls of her ranch. She realized that courage, compassion, and a willingness to help could create bonds that even the solitude of rural life could not break. And as the man rested safely under her care, she knew that the challenges of the next day would bring new surprises, perhaps even the arrival of those who had been searching for him all along. The sun had just risen, casting a soft golden glow across the hills, when Clara noticed movement in the distance. At first, she thought it might be a group of birds or deer grazing near the creek, but as she squinted, she realized the movement was too purposeful to belong to animals. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw several figures riding toward her cabin, each on horseback. The sound of hooves echoed across the fields, growing louder with every moment. The man, who had been resting on the porch with his leg carefully supported, sat up straighter. Recognition flickered across his face, mixed with surprise and relief. That must be them, he whispered. My brothers. Clara's mind raced. She had never met his family, and she wasn't sure how they would react. Would they be angry that a stranger had taken care of their brother? Would they be grateful? She didn't have long to wonder. Within minutes, the riders reached the edge of her property. There were 3 men, rugged and strong, each wearing hats that had been weathered by the sun. Their expressions were serious, but there was also a hint of concern as they rode closer, scanning the cabin and the small yard surrounding it. The cowboy struggled to rise, and Clara quickly moved to steady him. Take it slow, she advised. They're here. But don't worry. You're safe. He nodded, and together they stepped toward the approaching riders. As they drew closer, one of the brothers spoke first, his voice carrying across the open field. We've been looking for you all night, he called. Are you all right? The man's face lit up with relief. I'm fine, thanks to her, he said, pointing to Clara. The 3 brothers pulled their horses to a stop in front of the cabin. There was a brief silence as they took in the scene. Their brother, bandaged and leaning on Clara, and the small, well-kept ranch that had sheltered him. Then, one of the brothers dismounted and walked toward Clara, his boots crunching on the gravel. You saved him? He asked, his voice filled with awe and gratitude. Clara smiled quietly. He was hurt. I did what I could, she said. You don't have to thank me. The brother shook his head. No, we do. We can't thank you enough. You didn't just save him, you kept him safe all night. That's more than anyone could ask for. The other 2 brothers dismounted as well, helping their injured sibling with care and checking his wounds themselves. Clara noticed the way they moved together, the unspoken understanding and trust that came from years of working side by side on the ranch. There was a quiet strength in their unity, and she felt both respect and admiration for them. Where is he hurt the most? One of the brothers asked, his tone gentle but firm. Clara explained the injuries, showing them how she had bandaged his leg and cleaned minor cuts on his arms and chest. The brothers listened carefully, nodding in approval. You did a good job, one of them said, better than we could have done ourselves. The cowboy looked at Clara with gratitude in his eyes. I told you, he said softly. She saved me. The brothers exchanged glances, and then, as if by silent agreement, they smiled. It was a smile that carried relief, respect, and deep gratitude. We need to get him home, the eldest brother said. But first, there's something we need to do. Clara watched curiously as the brothers moved to the fence, signaling to a group of horses grazing nearby. One by one, more horses appeared from behind the hills, their manes shining in the sunlight. Before she could understand, the brothers began to lead the animals into her yard. Horses of all colors and sizes, strong and healthy, filled the open space, their hooves stamping the earth lightly as they settled in. Clara's eyes widened. She had never seen so many horses gathered in one place, and the sight was both overwhelming and breathtaking. This is, for me? She asked, unsure if she had understood correctly. The eldest brother nodded. It's a gift, he said. You saved our brother's life. These horses, they're a token of our gratitude. Take care of them, and they'll take care of you. Clara felt a rush of emotion. She had never expected anything in return for her actions. But this gesture was beyond anything she could have imagined. The yard was now filled with life and energy, a symbol of trust and appreciation. She realized that her simple act of kindness had created a connection that crossed the boundaries of isolation and solitude. The cowboy stepped forward, leaning on one of his brothers for support. You deserve this, he said, his voice filled with warmth. You didn't just help me, you showed courage and compassion. That means more than anything. Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had always cared for her animals, but the arrival of these horses was more than just a practical gift. It was a symbol of human kindness and the bonds that could form through shared experience. She walked among the horses, running her hands over their coats, feeling the strength and life they represented. The brothers watched her with satisfaction. We'll be back soon, the eldest said. But for now, enjoy them. You've earned it." As they prepared to leave, the cowboy turned to Clara. "I don't know how to thank you enough," he said. "You gave me a second chance. I'll never forget it." Clara shook her head gently. "You don't have to. Just take care of yourself and your family, and that will be thanks enough." The brothers mounted their horses and rode off across the fields, the sound of hooves fading into the distance. The cowboy stayed behind for a moment, looking at the herd that now filled Clara's yard. "I can't believe this," he said, awe in his voice. You really helped me more than I ever imagined." Clara smiled, a quiet happiness filling her chest. "I'm glad you're safe," she said simply. "That's all that matters." For the rest of the day, Clara tended to her new herd, guided by the lessons she had learned from years of working with animals. She fed them, checked their health, and watched them settle into the open space, feeling a sense of joy and satisfaction she hadn't experienced before. Each horse seemed to carry a piece of gratitude from the cowboy's family, a living reminder of the night she had acted with courage and compassion. The cowboy remained with her for a while, resting and sharing stories of his life and his family. They spoke of the challenges of ranch work, the dangers of the land, and the value of loyalty and trust. Clara listened, fascinated by his experiences and the bonds he shared with his brothers. For both of them, the day had brought a sense of connection, a realization that even in a world filled with isolation and hard work, kindness and courage could bridge gaps and create lasting relationships. As evening fell, the yard was calm again. The horses had settled, their heads lowered as they grazed peacefully. Clara stood among them, feeling the warmth of the day and the quiet joy of knowing she had made a difference. She looked at the horizon, thinking of the cowboy's family and the journey they had all shared, even indirectly, through trust, care, and gratitude. The day had been extraordinary, a turning point in her life that she would remember forever. She had faced uncertainty, acted with courage, and discovered the profound impact of compassion. The arrival of the cowboy's brothers and their generous gift of horses had transformed her ranch, her work, and her life. It was a reminder that even in the quietest corners of the world, acts of kindness could ripple outward, creating connections that changed lives. As night fell, Clara tended the horses one last time, feeling the soft breeze and the gentle sounds of the countryside. She knew that life would return to its usual rhythm, but now, it carried a new layer of meaning. She had proven to herself that courage, compassion, and integrity could create bonds that lasted far beyond a single night. And as she closed the barn doors and watched the stars appear once more in the sky, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that her actions had mattered in ways she had never imagined. The morning after the cowboy's brothers had left, Clara woke up to a quiet, peaceful ranch. The sunlight spilled over the hills and warmed her small cabin. For the first time in a long while, she felt the air of change around her. Her yard, once familiar and empty, was now filled with horses of all shapes and colors, their soft neighs and gentle movements bringing life and energy to her home. It was overwhelming and beautiful, and Clara took a moment to stand on her porch, breathing it all in. The cowboy had rested well that night. He was stronger, his breathing steady, and his eyes clearer than the day before. Sitting on the porch, he watched the herd in awe. "I can't believe this," he said softly. "You have so many now." Clara smiled, a mixture of pride and happiness swelling in her chest. "They're yours," she said. "Your family trusted me to care for them, and I will. Don't worry, they'll be safe here." The cowboy nodded, grateful. "I've never met anyone like you," he said quietly. "You're brave, strong, and kind." Clara chuckled softly. "I'm just someone who likes to help when it's needed. That's all." They spent the morning tending to the new herd. Clara guided them to fresh water, checked their coats, and made sure each horse was calm and comfortable. The cowboy assisted her, moving carefully to avoid hurting his still healing leg. Though he was not yet fully recovered, He wanted to be useful, and Clara appreciated the effort. Working side by side, a bond deepened between them, built on trust, respect, and shared care for the animals. As the day went on, Clara began to notice subtle changes in her own life. The quiet loneliness that had been a constant presence for years began to feel less heavy. There was now a sense of connection, not just with the horses, but with another human being who had shared danger and recovery with her. She realized that life, even in the most isolated places, could bring unexpected friendships and meaningful connections when people acted with courage and compassion. The Cowboys' brothers had left word that they would return soon to check on their herd. But for now, Clara had the pleasure of caring for them. She had always loved animals, but there was something special about these horses, gifted to her in gratitude. Each one seemed to carry a story, a life saved, and a reminder of the night she had acted, without hesitation, to help someone in need. By midday, the cowboy was able to walk without leaning too heavily on support, moving around the cabin and yard with more confidence. He practiced gentle stretches, encouraged by Clara's guidance, and she could see the strength slowly returning to his body. She admired his determination and resilience. He had faced pain and fear, yet he remained humble and grateful. A man who understood the value of life, family, and kindness. They shared simple meals together, talking about life on the ranch, the challenges of the land, and the dreams they each held for the future. Clara told stories of her childhood on the ranch, of learning to ride horses, mend fences, and care for the animals on her own. The cowboy shared memories of growing up with his brothers, the hard work of moving cattle, and the bonds that held their family together. With every story, their friendship grew stronger, anchored in mutual respect and shared understanding. The afternoon brought new work. Clara led the horses into a larger pasture, showing the cowboy how to manage the herd and observe their behavior. They guided them carefully, ensuring that no horse felt stressed or anxious. The cowboy was attentive, learning quickly and adapting to Clara's methods. Watching him, Clara realized that his presence brought not only companionship but also a sense of joy and energy to her daily life. The quiet ranch, which had felt lonely for so long, now buzzed with movement, life, and laughter. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Clara took a moment to sit on the porch and watch the horses graze peacefully. She thought about the events of the past few days, the night she had found the wounded cowboy, the long hours of care, and the arrival of his grateful brothers. Her heart felt full. In a way, her life had changed forever, not because of wealth or fortune, but because of the simple acts of courage and kindness she had shown. The cowboy joined her on the porch, leaning against the railing with a relaxed smile. "I don't know how to thank you enough," he said softly. "You saved my life, and my brother's. They made sure I could repay that in the best way possible. I'll never forget this." Clara shook her head gently. "You don't need to repay me," she said. "The important thing is that you're safe and will be okay. That's enough." He nodded, though his eyes reflected deep gratitude. "Still, I want you to know that what you did, it matters. You didn't just help me. You've changed my life and the lives of my brothers in ways you might not even realize." As night fell, the stars sparkled brilliantly across the clear sky. The ranch was quiet again, but not in the way it had been before. There was a sense of peace, fulfillment, and connection that filled the air. The horses slept calmly in the pastures, their presence a constant reminder of trust and gratitude. Clara felt a sense of satisfaction she hadn't experienced in years. Her days of solitude, hard work, and careful routine had prepared her for this moment, allowing her courage and compassion to shine when it was most needed. In the days that followed, Clara's life slowly returned to a comfortable rhythm, now enriched by the presence of the new horses and her friendship with the cowboy. They worked together daily, feeding, grooming, and training the horses. Each task was a chance to deepen their bond and appreciate the simple beauty of life on the ranch. They shared laughter over small mistakes, celebrated minor successes, and found joy in each other's company. The cowboys' brothers visited occasionally, always respectful and kind, checking on their herd and expressing gratitude for Clara's care. Each visit strengthened the connection between the two families, creating a sense of community that had previously been missing from Clara's isolated life. She realized that her act of kindness had done more than save a life. It had created trust, friendship, and mutual respect that would last far beyond that single night. Over time, Clara noticed changes in herself as well. She felt less lonely, more connected, and more confident in her ability to face challenges. She understood that courage and compassion were not just qualities for emergencies, they were ways of living, guiding her actions and shaping the life she wanted to lead. The ranch, once a quiet and solitary place, had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of human connection. The cowboy, now fully recovered, remained a frequent presence on the ranch. Together, they explored the hills, checked the fences, and ensured the horses were healthy and happy. They shared stories, dreams, and plans for the future, discovering a shared love for the land and a mutual respect that deepened with each passing day. Clara felt a sense of companionship she had never known before. A reminder that life, even in the most isolated places, could bring unexpected joy and meaningful relationships. As the weeks passed, Clara looked out over her yard filled with horses, her heart full of gratitude. The animals thrived under her care, and the cowboy's presence brought companionship and support. The bond they had formed in a moment of crisis had blossomed into lasting friendship, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. The ranch, once a symbol of solitude, had transformed into a place of life, energy, and hope. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Clara and the cowboy sat together on the porch, watching the horses graze peacefully. The wind carried the faint scent of wildflowers, and the world felt calm and safe. Clara reflected on the journey she had taken from the lonely cowgirl, tending her small ranch, to the woman who had faced a crisis with courage and compassion, and who had, in turn, received the gift of connection and friendship. "I never imagined things would turn out like this," Clara said quietly, a smile on her face. The cowboy looked at her, gratitude and admiration in his eyes. "Neither did I," he replied, "but I'm glad they did. You've changed my life, and I think, in some ways, I've changed yours too." Clara nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Maybe," she said, "but the important thing is that we helped each other, and that's something I'll always remember." The stars emerged one by one, sparkling above the ranch. Clara and the cowboy sat in companionable silence, watching the herd move gently in the fading light. The land, the animals, and the bonds of trust and friendship created a world that was richer, warmer, and fuller than either of them had imagined. For Clara, the experience had shown that courage and kindness could change lives, not just the life of the person in need, but the life of the one who gave help freely. And as the night settled over the ranch, Clara felt a quiet certainty. Life would continue, full of challenges and hard work, but it would also be filled with connection, gratitude, and the enduring beauty of simple acts of courage. She had learned that even in the quietest, loneliest places, life could surprise you with friendship, generosity, and the warmth of human kindness. And with that knowledge, she closed her eyes, feeling content, hopeful, and ready for whatever adventures lay ahead.